This presentation is about how to create effective traditional PowerPoint slides. PowerPoint slides can be used for presentations with didactic lecture when multimedia, graphics, and photos will enhance the teaching session. There are advantages to using PowerPoint. The pace of viewing is controlled by the instructor during the lecture. If the room is smartboard friendly, you can annotate on them. Once you have your slides created in PowerPoint, or while you are planning the program, the slides are customizable by the use of the slide sorter view. You just click on a slide and drag it into the place where you would want it to be and place it right before that slide. There's a little red line that appears. When you click and drag back, you can see that small red line on the right, and then the slide is moved to the other location. So now let's move back into the normal view. The slides can be combined with sound to create a narrated video. I'm going to move to the slideshow view so that I can show you an example of a slide presentation that was combined with sound and narrated in Camtasia for the PC. So let's click on the forward arrow.
In this PowerPoint movie, I will demonstrate
and then using this player, we can click here to go full screen.
And also explore how you can choose a background for your slides. In the Design tab, which is right here, when you click on the first slide in your series to select it, as you mouse over the different design themes, you can see how the design themes will affect the slides you've already created. When you click on one of the design themes, you can mouse through and click and see how that theme has affected the slides in your series. If you don't like this style, click on the back arrow and you will be
So using this example, you can see how your narrated slide presentation would look if you were to choose Camtasia Studio to narrate your slides. Let's go back to the normal view now. An audience should have no trouble viewing a PowerPoint slide, even after the presentation is converted to a PDF file for a student to view in Moodle. To avoid compression of an overload of material on a slide, know that the image area of the slide is 7 inches by 9 inches. The entire image area is about 7.5 inches by 10 inches. So to help you create a readable format, you can use a piece of paper. Fold your page in half when designing a slide. This practice will force you into a smaller workspace and help you avoid cluttering the image. Or you can use 5x7 index cards to build your ideas. This practice allows you to move your cards around on a tabletop so you can see your story at a glance. Then you could place the visual at your feet and stand over it. If you have no problem reading the text, then the audience won't have a problem reading it when the visual is projected. Or you can go back and use the PowerPoint slide sorter, so you can move your thumbnail sketches around easily. So I'm going to move into the slideshow mode now. Your presentation should have a title slide that introduces the speaker, the topic, the date, and other information that you want to state, and it looks best centered. The presentation should also have an ending slide that provides a summary and maybe your contact information. Times and Arial are two good type styles to use for visibility and coherent appearance. Times allows more characters per line. It's considered clean and readable and timeless. Arial is used to make the titles on slides pop. Arial and Times look good together because the styles are obviously different, but the styles complement each other. Here's an example of a bad-looking slide. On a slide, the type should not be too small. Try to fill up the image area, but not overly clutter it. An effective presentation should not try to answer every question visually. This process will lead to excessive information. This is another example of a bad slide. There's too much text on the slide. If you have this much information you need to present to a class, consider creating an information packet of material that you can't cover in class and link to it in Moodle as a PDF file. Or create an e-learning module of pre-reading samples. For example, this is an e-learning module, authoringware, that we have at the School of Medicine that you can use to create pre-reading material along with photographs and diagrams and other artwork that you need the class to know about. You can use this format for pre-reading material, then your slides would definitely be less cluttered. When you are creating your slides, remember, headings should be at least 44 points. This particular size is 48. Body text should be at least 24. This particular text is 32. Here's a good example of bulleted items on a slide stressing key points. If you have over 7 bulleted items of information you need to stress on a slide, consider chunking the slide into 2 slides. Here's an example of a slide with a shaded background and Times font for the body and Arial text for the heading. Shaded backgrounds on slides can easily be readable because the color helps the audience to absorb information and not to be distracted. Be careful with color because color affects mood, interest, motivation, and perception. We'll talk more about color in a few moments. A build sequence is a technique used to reveal single lines of type in stages to create a steady focus for the audience. You can also dim a color while revealing the next line of type, and that lets the eye focus on a brighter and more current item. Using this technique, the presenter can choose the pace and manipulate the eye of the learner during the presentation. All of these build techniques can be created within the Animations tab in PowerPoint. Let's switch back to PowerPoint and let's go back to the slide with the build sequence. Here's the Animations tab in PowerPoint. And here are some of the features. The build sequence can have a transition sound, a transition speed, which you can set to slow, medium, or fast. You can apply the transitions to all of the slides, which I wouldn't recommend. This particular slide right here has a build sequence, and you can see that the custom animation tab is right here. And when you highlight the line of type, you can apply a custom animation to that particular tab. Here are the custom animations that are applied already within that realm. Here's the custom animation menu box, and you can see the separate animations that are applied to each line right here. This is number 1, this is number 2 text box, and this is number 3 text box, and all of these animations are applied. On click, they all appear from the bottom and they all appear very fast. So these little numbers right here will disappear when I change back to the normal view. And I can close out of this box and return back to the slide show view. And then here are my animations that I indicated within that box, within that menu box. Let's talk a little about graphics. Graphics appeal to visual learners, and they add variety to materials and help learners construct effective mental representations, and they should be used only when necessary. You can design graphics so the art can be seen by a person sitting farthest from the screen. When you do this, if you are using graphic symbols, which can be graphs, icons, and logos, be consistent and use a consistent style and color pattern. Use similarly styled clip art. This enhances learning by minimizing distraction. Use original art or clip art that is not copyrighted. For medical education slides, relevant graphics can be used to illustrate worked examples. You can use graphics on a slide to demonstrate steps in a procedure or to show complex relationships among content and concepts. In this slide, the presenter wants to depict the concept of accumulation and steady state. So in the image on the left, it shows that if an amount of a drug enters the vein, at the same amount of the drug exits the body via the kidneys, we are at a steady state. In the image of the water tank, it shows that if an amount of water enters the tank and exits at the tank at the same level, the water level remains the same and we are at steady state. The graphic styles are similar in style and are large enough to be seen by all. This slide demonstrates how information can be formatted to eliminate the need for students to integrate several sources of information. The written material, instead of being separated from the diagrams on separate slide or slides, is incorporated into the slide. So the learners don't have to search for reference material. For the student, the cognitive load is reduced and their attention can be directed to schema acquisition of the formulas. Remember, bullets make traditional slides more appealing. As a reminder, if you are using bullets, use no more than 7 bullets per slide instead of paragraphs of info on the slide. If you're going to use color in your slides, remember that color does have an impact on an audience. You don't want your color choices to make your slides look confusing like a color circus, drawing attention away from your main points. Use a maximum of only 3 colors for your slides. You can use the font color menus in PowerPoint. In PowerPoint, with the text selected, you can click on the font color box arrow in the font group on the Home tab to display the font color gallery. Let's take a look at that right now. Let's go back to the Home tab and let's go to the font color gallery. Let's just click on the font right here, and here's our font color gallery. These are the theme colors that you can use to change the theme of your slide. Say you had a blue theme and you wanted this slide to follow through with a blue theme. The color suggestions for this option are right here, and you can see that they will all match. So if you're unsure, you can use this font color gallery to change the color of your slides that, in a nice color format that will look cohesive. Here are the reds. So I just wanted to show you that option. It's a pull-down menu that you can use that's very convenient. Try to plan your slide text and or other background colors for your presentation by recalling your own reactions to the physical effects of color. The following slides will depict information about emotional responses to color depending on the response you want your lesson to evoke. Gray mainly focuses on neutrality. Blue shows a conservative approach and inspires credibility. Green stimulates action and hope. Red can inspire action and passion for sales or marketing events. In designing effective multimedia presentations like PowerPoints, John Mayer has formulated the coherence principle, which focuses on stressing that multimedia presentations need to be interesting, but irrelevant details distract from learning. Irrelevant details on slides can include sounds, graphics, and unnecessary words. Irrelevant details also include too many animations or transitions in PowerPoint slides, or when an instructor adds cartoons or photos to presentations for aesthetic value to spice up a lecture. The extra info can distract the learner from relevant material and disrupt the learner from building appropriate links. So while viewing this demonstration on Death by PowerPoint from Carl Kapp, the most important thing you need to do is to think about how it may be appropriate for you to apply some of the techniques Mr. Kapp describes into your slides for the School of Medicine and where you can use his techniques. I'm going to click on the link and set up the video for you to watch.
Hi, this is Carl Kopp from Bloomsburg University's Department of Instructional Technology. This presentation addresses the ASTD's Learning Circuit's big question for May, which is PowerPoint. What is appropriate, when, and why? I thought I'd take a few minutes and show some examples of bad PowerPoint slides and then some examples of better PowerPoint slides to show when it can be effective. Jay Cross got me started in this direction with his samples of PowerPoint slides in his blog. However, before I go on, there's one thing I do want to say, is that we cannot blame the tool. Study after study shows that good design, regardless of the technology, is what makes for good learning. In the end, it's the design and not the tool that impacts learning. And PowerPoint, of course, is only a tool. So now let's look at some examples. Here is a typical PowerPoint slide designed to encourage audience members to think about the stereotypical gamer they may have envisioned in their mind. Notice the slide contains all the right elements: the general heading, a subheading, bullet points, and even a graphic. However, even with all these elements, it can be made more effective. This traditional slide needs some help. Here is a slide I used to convey the same message. I place the slide on the screen and ask audience members to write down or think about the first words that come to their mind. I even pause and then give them a moment to think about it. Then I ask them to shout out their impressions. Then I animate what the bullet points are. The animation is fun. It's like the 1960s Batman series, and everyone has a laugh when they see their own impressions reflected on the screen. Then we stop and we discuss why these labels are used to describe gamers, and the fact that these labels are really not accurate. This simple slide with very few words provides a great conversation and allows the audience really to get into the message that I'm presenting. Here's another typical PowerPoint slide designed to teach the benefits of a blog to an organization. Notice the traditional bullets in the screen capture. This slide, the way it is now, it needs some work. Here is a sample of the same content, only this time I enlarge the screen capture to take up the entire screen, and I use callouts to show the benefits. The value is that each benefit is tied directly to an area on the screen. The callouts show a concrete relationship between the screen and the benefit I'm describing and how it looks on a blog. It provides a concrete image to the learners so that they can make a link in their mind between what happens in the blog and the benefits that an organization may receive. Again, here's a typical PowerPoint slide. In this slide, the learner is to identify themselves as either a digital native or a digital immigrant. The presenter may then talk about the gap between the groups and what it means to be a member of one group or the other. Obviously, this slide needs some work before it can really be deemed effective. Here's the same content. What I do when I first show this slide is to ask the learners to identify themselves from the list in the middle, and then decide which side of the slide their generation fits. Go ahead, you might even want to try it yourself. Then I animate the slide and watch as the learners' decisions are confirmed or not confirmed as each word moves to a certain side. I usually get a number of gasps when the Generation X goes to the immigrant side. Then I ask the learners to discuss the differences between the two groups and ask them to think about whether or not there really is a gap. I've had people tell me this slide really helps them understand that there is a gap, but really this slide doesn't help at all. It simply sets the stage for the discussion. It's the discussion that really helps these people understand what the gap is and why the gap occurs. Here's another typical PowerPoint slide. It apparently is designed to tell the story of how the boomer generation was impacted by the space race and how putting a man on the moon really added to the whole feeling of the boomer generation. But the slide really contains little emotion and it actually needs to be redesigned. So here's the redesign of the slide, a stark black background with just the Earth far in the distance and the astronaut in the foreground. I then animate a newspaper. Notice no PowerPoint words are used on the slide. I then point out in the newspaper that it's from London, and so landing a man on the moon was an international event. I also point out the smaller print, one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. This slide conveys some emotion and drama, all without one bullet point. Here's a slide designed to discuss the expectation of feedback in the gamer generation. The slide takes something as fun as Pac-Man and actually makes it boring. Really, a new approach to this type of content is needed if the learners are really going to get the message the presenter is trying to convey. Here's the redesign of the slide. I enlarge the screen and I animate both the Pac-Man Ghost Inky and Pac-Man. I can then discuss immediate feedback, the dots disappearing, or constructive feedback, getting caught by the ghost, or even feedback as guidance, knowing where to move to avoid the ghost. I can also discuss learning from the feedback. When you get eaten at one level, you try the next time and you try a different path. I can also even discuss pattern recognition and anticipation of getting munched by the ghost. All kinds of feedbacks, all kinds of discussions can ensue. The screen can be used to discuss many different aspects of feedback, all on one PowerPoint screen with no bullets anywhere. Here is a discussion of something called the aircraft carrier syndrome. The idea is that when you introduce a new technology to an organization, initially you'll see a dip in productivity and then a steep rise. Unfortunately, management usually cuts off the innovation at the bottom of the dip before productivity really starts to improve. This is called the aircraft carrier syndrome because when a plane takes off from the aircraft carrier, I'm told there's a slight dip and then a quick ascent. However, this slide hardly tells that story and is anything but engaging. Here's the graphic that I use to tell the aircraft carrier syndrome story. I first animate the plane and then ask the learners what they saw. They usually tell me they saw the plane dip. I ask them about the impact of the dip and what would happen if the pilot abandoned the plane at that very moment. I then animate the path of the aircraft. And then I begin a discussion of how the implementation of new technologies typically follows the same path, but is usually cut off right before the new technology has a chance to begin climbing or a chance to become profitable. The analogy and the PowerPoint animation clearly tell a better story than the previous slide. This slide engages the audience, asks them to observe what they see, and then to report on that observation, and then make a discussion point about what happens to the plane. Clearly, a better use of PowerPoint than the previous slide. Here's one of my pet peeves, putting a chart or a table in PowerPoint and then stating, I know you can't read this, but it really doesn't have to be this way. You can still use a chart and then explain it without having the audience straining to see what you're talking about. Let's see how that can be done. To remedy this problem, I simply take the chart and then create in the background a box or a part of the chart. And then I enlarge it with 24-point font or bigger, and then I add an animation to have it appear in front of the chart. The great part of doing this is that you keep the context in which the information is shown because the chart is in the background, and you can make it big enough for everyone to see it. Using PowerPoint this way is clearly a win-win. You can then do it for every level in your chart, and you'll be able to see the information, the audience sees it, and you can go through the chart showing the information. Again, a great use of PowerPoint. Okay, so these are just a few examples, and of course non-examples, of how PowerPoint can be used effectively or not to convey a message. So the next time you're designing some of your PowerPoint slides, don't blame PowerPoint for being PowerPointless, because sometimes I know you do. What I really want you to do is think of some of these examples and try some of these in your own PowerPoint presentations. Remember, the design of the slides and the interaction with the audience is what's important, not the fact that you're using PowerPoint or not using PowerPoint. It can be actually a really great tool if used correctly.
So as you can see, there are traditional PowerPoint slides that can include information and images and processes and procedures with graphics. And there are also creative ways to use PowerPoint in medical education. So thank you for watching that video. This slide lists a summary of the points you need to follow to create basic, traditional, effective PowerPoint slides using a title slide and a summary slide, dark and a light contrasting color theme, 2 fonts only, limited bulleted items, and use less than 20 slides per 60 minutes of presentation. Please note the information on this acknowledgement slide if you would like to read or view additional reference materials used to create this presentation. If you need help in creating any of the techniques in PowerPoint described in this presentation or the video, please contact me via the information on this slide in the Educational Information Technology Office in the School of Medicine, and I would be happy to meet with you and assist you. Thank you.